Okay. I'm duty bound by the state of California, Olaf, to ask your permission to record this call.
Yes, sure. That's fine with me.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I have the pleasure today of talking with Olaf WItkowski, who is a new friend of mine, someone who I've discovered recently thanks to Dr. Adams. But I'm absolutely fascinated by A-Life culture in Japan and obviously running a company associated with that. So for folks listening in, could you give an introduction to who you are and your connection with artificial life?
Sure. Yeah. First, very many thanks for inviting me to your little place. I guess I have some kind of a background in sort of large interest in language, the structure, nature of language. Also, I learned a dozen of languages as I grew up. It became a sort of hobby. And then I came in contact with computer science, and that included ELIZA and things like that. So I was fascinated by computers being able to produce language. I thought, if we can do that, then maybe those languages can have different dynamics. Maybe they can be more efficient. So I did a lot of simulations as a hobby, and that brought me to, I think, slowly simulating the evolution of languages, the emergence of language between agents, and the evolution of the agents themselves eventually. So that's my approach into artificial life. And and now I have a sort of role in A-Life. So I'm the current president of its international society, and my group and all the collaborations that I'm involved in are very A-Life influenced.
Fascinating, fascinating. When I looked at your LinkedIn, University of Sheffield stuck out to me because the way A-Life is viewed in the US is very different than the way A-Life is viewed in the UK, and very different again to the way A-Life is viewed in Japan. Could you talk a little bit about your time at Sheffield and your experiences with regards to their particular practicing of A-Life?
Sure, yeah. Actually, that was at a time when I wasn't in contact with A-Life yet. That was right before I moved to Japan. I had gotten a grant to travel and do some research in Japan. But I decided between things. I had a company back then that I had created during my master's. I was doing an extra year on linguistics because I thought it was fascinating, like I was saying. And I looked at where were the top NLP, natural language processing groups in the world. And there was one in Stanford. People told me it was very difficult to get there because of US grants. There was one in Japan. I had applied and I had gotten the grant. And there was one in Sheffield. And before I left Europe, I thought, I should really go there. Amazing group. They invented a bunch of tools, processing language automatically. And for me, it was dark magic. And I spent a fabulous time there.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's talk a little bit about Cross Labs and Cross Compass and how that whole thing fits together, because certainly, coming to it through ERA and these kind of, avenues, I get a kind of pinnacle sense, particularly associated with the caliber of people that you have, doing your videos and doing your talks. But let's talk a little bit about what it takes to create an A-Life company in Japan. What was the experience around that?
Well, I guess it's very similar to other places. The way I created that was in contact with. It's often people, isn't it? So I met someone who was leading their own company, and at the time I was in the US at the Institute for Advanced Study, and I had decided that the US were not really for me. I was looking for other places to establish it. And I had lived in Japan before and was just talking to a bunch of companies that saw AI not as just a tool to make solve your problem within a few months and sell it, but had a sort of longer term approach and yet had an impact wanted to change society, right? Have a positive impact and help. There were a few, and the one I found was Cross Compass was the name of the company, and it was led by someone called Katsu Suzuki, and he had obviously the best approach, the most open-minded approach to AI. And when he was talking about AI, I heard, no, this is what you mean is really A life, the more open-ended part of artificial intelligence. So we were an excellent fit, and I learned it from the beginning, I think. Yeah.
Interesting. Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, you've talked about the US not being the place to do a company. Can you talk a little bit about the way life is viewed specifically in Japan, perhaps in contrast to the US or the UK?
Right. I think everybody knows that the US are the place where AI is a bit feared, and there are doomer stories about the world ending very soon, and killer robot, and you see that in science fiction a lot. And I think it's very telling compared to the stories that we tell here in animation and films and the literature. Robots here are friends. And I think it must be influenced by something like the Shinto and the Buddhism, and maybe Taoist also influences in Asia. All the whole history. Also in Shinto, in Japan, you have the influence of spirits being souls that are as valuable as you. They're alive. They influence life. Nature is personified somehow, right? It's a real actor in your everyday life, and there's this notion of respect for those things that are objectified in the West. And I think because of this, robots similarly are seen as having souls and all of that. And not that I invest so much in the belief of all of this, but it's just the behavior, the respect that you start with, not assuming anything about those other new beings, right? And maybe hybrids as well. So my favorite movie being Ghost in the Shell, that perhaps you know. So from 1995, it's amazing. It studies all the aspects of those possible new other types of beings, including hybrids that also go online and have an awareness of their own. All of that shows the more open-minded state of things here. So that means that we can progress in a more creative way than what we see in the UK. It's also very strong, right? But you have a lot of research about fear from conscious beings and from future AGI, and that has fueled. So have a lot of respect for Bostrom and so on, but they do have a doomer kind of perspective that really blocks science rather than advances it.
Certainly. I mean, the whole notion of life being a simulation seems to me to be relatively uncontroversial, but I think that's where we probably agree, rather than pick up Bostrom's particular perspective. So I'm interested just in the day-to-day. I asked Dr. Adams about this as well, but I'm interested in the day-to-day of running an artificial life company anywhere in the world, actually, but specifically in Japan, associated with companies and universities and grants and all these kind of things going in a cyclical basis. It's amazing to see companies such as yours, continue to work and continue to find resources and positive avenues in order to continue this kind of research. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I think it's a challenging area. So it's also hard not to fall into DX. Just finding just small things to take advantage of to develop your business. So companies that really do research, there are just a few, even in Japan. What we look for is areas that are underdeveloped by giants, because I don't want to be competing, and I don't see any interest to be competing with an open AI. I don't want to create another GPT. Actually, it seems to be a hobby right now, like creating Dodge coins and things like that. So I'm not really interested in all of that. But if we can advance research in industry, I think we should aim at things that are high risk but also high reward, and not aim at one single one. I think something like the approach of AstroTeller at X, or there are a few researchers. Oh, also some parts of DeepMind are so creative. I think that's the right approach, right? And I think it's faster to do it for AI and related fields like artificial life. We are too slow now in academia per se. So we have to sort of exit that kind of model and sort of trust that we can profit society and engage with it. So in the industry, I think there are areas of research that profit quite fast. Within a few years, we just have to trust it more than just production for 5 to 10 year scale. And I think if you look around, you'll find people who are very ready to back that in the industry. And I have found this niche in Japan. People who are excited about that, including artificial life as a larger mission, as understanding other types of diverse beings in the universe, and possibly the ones that we can create or hybridize with. And I think it will be the same kind of challenge everywhere, finding the right place in society where you can plug yourself in. And we're it's a very small team right here at Cross Labs, and the other small institutes that I'm involved with are also rather small, and that's all right. I think this way we can sort of diversify, and we have this network of A Life Ventures. That's actually much more than what I can find in academia, where people have to sort of pretend they're doing robotics or something else in order to find a job. But you know a lot about this.
Certainly.
Well, about this before.
Certainly. Well, our mutual friend Charles Offria set a seed in your mind, but having had a conversation with me probably about 12 years ago, and it was fascinating when we first met that you ventured that forward. I think my perspective has changed over the years. I'm not the same person that Charles knew 12 years ago. Not more optimistic, I don't know, but certainly, time has changed some of my perspectives. But the same question still resides associated with what is the value of artificial life. If you can explicitly state the value of artificial life, then obviously it's easier to do the stuff that you do. What's your perspective? And in contrast to this AI, which I found fascinating just through correspondence with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, one main thing that we tend to lean into is open-endedness, as Ken Stanley, others have stated recently, or not so recently, probably a decade ago or more. It's creating AI that doesn't require just pushing data eternally into it, so that it's for it to discover new innovations. And maybe our own model is how we view ourselves as a society of scientists, discoverers, innovators, is that we can derive, like mathematicians, things on the whiteboard without any data. And if there is any data, it's actually data that we are producing and feeding back into the machine. So maybe there is a sort of a critical mass that we need to reach for a life to be as creative. But whatever it is, once we have built that, this will pass we will skip any other few steps that AI could reach. So we had feed-forward neural nets, we had recurrent neural nets, and then we had the transformer, and now everybody is really invested in transformer because, of course, it allowed, with a few architecture tweaks, to create LLMs, and now everybody is invested really into LLMs. But we should look into at least the next step, maybe modeling other types of intelligence than just human intelligence, which is what AI is about, and modeling diverse intelligences. I think that's the most important. It's just not being stuck in one optimum, which we tend to be in the field of AI. And I think that's what A Life is fixated on. It's not being stuck on local optima. And I really like that spirit in the field. And I think open-endedness, the mission of building a machine that will keep discovering forever, that's a nice approach, maybe the right way to formulate it easily.
So many ideas come from that. I mean, I think Ken Stanley is responsible for bringing A-Life to AI. I think he really took, and particularly the stuff he was doing with Neat and Neuro prior to OpenAI. That technology, COVID helped, I think, as well. But that technology brought in a series of optimizations that just didn't exist previously. So I think artificial life has some responsibility with regards to contemporary AI as well. But we could also learn from that. And I think the discussions associated with open-endedness, I've had them with Tim Taylor, I've had them with Hiroki, I've had them with a variety of different folk. It always interests me, I mean, particularly academics like Tim Taylor and their perspective on open-endedness, how frustrated he is with some aspects of A-Life, but when if you kind of tease from him, certain other things, stuff that Hiroki has done, the beauty of Hiroki's work is he created stuff in the, 2010, 2011, 2013, that kind of time frame. His study of his systems is what has created his view with regards to open-endedness from that. So the beauty we have in artificial life developers, even hobbyists, is that we can create these systems and then spend a lifetime studying them and seeing how actually open-endedness can be used accordingly. How do you view that from a commercial perspective? How do you explain that to potential backers of your work associated with the benefits of A-Life?
Do you mean in a particular strand of A-Life, or in my personal one, or
just in general? I mean, what excites me about Hiroki's narrative is that he didn't realize what he'd created. He had to actually study that. And in studying what he created, he realized there was actually more. It's this idea of the sum of the parts, greater experience than the sum of the parts, basically, the Gestalt. And certainly talking with Tim Taylor and talking with Hiroki about the same time and realizing that what I'd seen in Tim Taylor, which I thought was originally quite negative associated with artificial life, was actually quite positive when you pointed him towards, folks such as Hiroki's work. And I've always thought that open-endedness wasn't necessarily a problem as much it was, something that just came from the kind of nature of polymath exploring a variable space through computation. But the time taken to study it is what fascinates me with Hiroki's work, because that's certainly been my own experience as well. I've been developing for, nearly 30 years now. And the stuff that's coming out of my work still, interests me to this today. I mean, it's what continues me to kind of contribute to my own open source and try to encourage others to work in it. I look at things like Avida, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with a fellow called John Klein, but he had, I think he had, what did he, oh, my mind has gone blank, unfortunately. But there are all these people that have created this stuff which build on open-endedness fundamentally and come through A-Life in order to do that. But there's also a certain expectancy. Larry Yeager and I have had long-standing friendship, long-standing collaboration. I've always been trying to push Polyworld in a particular direction. Now he's retired, he can look at the sky, as he says. But it is the responsibility of those that are still in the field to take some of this work and actually push it in a particular direction. Because I think, that's where it becomes fascinating. That's where it becomes true, biological science studying. Associated with the things that are created and working backwards and actually finding the attributes from that. How do you explain this? I mean, I understand that universities contribute substantially to your, your company, but how do you explain this from a commercial perspective when you meet with potential commercial backers?
Yeah, that's so. Yeah, so people like Hiroki, Tim, all those guys. Me included, we have our own pet models that we like to play with. Those are, the toy models, like physicists call them, where you replicate some of reality, and I think there's something special about A-Lifers that we look for surprises much more than other fields where they. So it's a more maximalistic rather than reductionist kind of way of doing science, which is sort of harder. But it also opens ways of looking at ourselves, and people have radically changed their views by looking at their own model. And I think what they saw, and I think what Hiroki Tims see is themselves, like parts of their own philosophy. And
Certainly.
it's just without the toy model, you don't build that mirror to see those things, right? And yet, once you have externalized that part of yourself into the model, it's easier now to explain it to others, right? So we are sort of in this way, we're sort of philosophers, but we are materialistic philosophers. We have digitalized or materialized our concepts, and now they're easy to explain to people in the industry. Look, this is Lenya or an envelope or an Evo grid, I think is or there are different models that you can show amazing properties, but now you have something to point at and it's easy to explain. Now let's do the same with your system, or let's do this, we can apply this to this problem, for example. And sometimes it's very immediate. For example, so I worked on swarms, and that helped me a lot because the communication channels were right there, and the information theory tools are right there. So I applied them directly into the work, and sometimes that helps. But even the when it's not so direct, I think it really speaks to people and industry people, because I'm sort of one too. They're not different from us, right? They're also interested by fundamental questions about the mind and reality and the nature of life, and that's just giving them an excuse, right, to dive into it.
Certainly. Breve is John Klein's simulation, for folks listening in. What's fascinated me through my own work is my interaction with Apple and Intel in particular, because they both took aspects of my artificial life simulation and used it to their own ends, which I think is fundamentally an interesting way that artificial life can be shown to industry. They have particular issues with regards to processing power, with regards to graphics technology. They need things to be shown in real time. They need ways to do various kinds of processor optimization, and certainly that was the way my work was used at Apple and Intel. Still used to this day at Apple. And what fascinates me is which is probably the seed of the conversation with Charles that you had, was this notion that we need to not tailor ourselves to industry, but we need to just promote our work in industry as a means for them to, tick whatever boxes they're looking to tick with the stuff that we're developing. In terms of immediate kind of corporate interest, do you get the same sense that this is what you're doing fundamentally? You're just basically providing a zoology for contemporary companies to look at and take notes from? What's your thinking?
Well, that's interesting. I never thought about it that way. So I guess the answer is no. But how do I see it? I'm not exactly sure. I think the zoology is close to maybe. I see a life as giving us many substrates as alternatives to compute, right, and to learn. And like you say yourself, right, about a life. A life has made AI what it is now. It has given it various tools from neural nets to various more detailed algorithms that were exported and sold better in the field of AI. But what it has attempted over the years was always to preserve this diversity, this zoology of substrates, embodiments in which you can compute. And there is no such thing as a free lunch, says David Wolpert, right? But there is such a thing as cheaper lunch, and you can get cheaper and nice lunches, delicious lunches in other substrates if you open your mind to something different than a GPU. Not only neural units nowadays, but also something widely different in computing, in water, or having a very different kind of robot. All of that is what has brought this is what A-Life is bringing us. I think the alternative, right, in terms of embodiments in the future. And yeah, that's priceless. I think people can recognize that if you bring it on the table and you open the catalog of A Life, this has to be exciting. If they're not excited, then I'm not excited to work with them, right? I think
There needs to be mutual excitement.
you have to be fascinated by that if you look at it. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, certainly, particularly in the US, corporations are particularly brutal. Certainly with my own work, I've worked with teams at Apple because the teams have, eliminated and moved. And as Apple moved its processing onto Intel architecture initially, this was the movement that I saw, that the brilliant minds at Apple who were working on my stuff were no longer there after the first couple of years. So this kind of brutalism, which you see in particular in US industry, is something which I've kind of weathered as watched it change. Do you think there's a better long-term perspective with regards to Japan and their philosophy of technology? What interests me is the idea that you couldn't do what you're doing in the US. What factors in the US do you see as needing to be overcome before, obviously, these kind of endeavors are also done positively here?
Right. Well, yeah, I said earlier about the doomer kind of view of AI, and I think that's not a joke. But if you enlarge that, I think there is something special in Japan in terms of how it views philosophy here, the Kyoto School philosophy. So Nishida Kitaro and others have this radically different way of viewing what is knowledge and what is valuable than other places in the world. And I think the Western view has grown into this kind of capitalistic race. For one simple goal. Assembling a resource and becoming bigger, which makes good sense, right? But there are other things, and and I think there are other systems that are under the hood of different philosophies. And I think also the approach of just seeing other beings as other systems of values as possibly interesting, and not having to be the driver of the car. So there's a lot of people who are afraid, right, that AI is going to take over, not only take our jobs, but also just decide instead of us. I think we can design things if we just not focus on this type of fear anymore. We can design AI with which we can hybridize. I think I said that before. That's all the development of prosthetics that are pretty advanced here in Japan, or developmental robotics, or cognitive robotics that sort of augment, that make you feel like they are an extension of you. All of those, those are sort of the tools that are going to transform the calculator kind of AI into abacus kind of AIs. And I think that is going to happen here because it's more urgent. And so Korea, Japan, China also have a problem with their population. So if they don't fix the problem of AI, right, they're going to die off as an economy. So they have a pressure to fix it, and maybe that's another reason. No, it's you see whenever there's a bottleneck in history, that's when you saw a big brilliant invention. I think you need those bottlenecks for invention. So we have a sort of deadline on this, maybe 10 years. So let's use that wisely, not just invest everything in the current transformer architecture. And I think if anywhere is able to realize that, or has to realize that, it's here in Japan, where the aging population problem and jobs are very different from trying to just protect them from same kind of fear. So maybe a different kind of pressure that also helps. So different kind of pressure, the different kind of philosophy, and the consideration for other beings, other souls. All of that is a good, powerful combination. I think that's the uniqueness here.
And it is fascinating.
Thank you for asking.
No, I like to dig deeply in it, because certainly for probably about the first 5 to 7 years of my work being online and freely available, both university and military institutions in Iran downloaded my software quite dramatically. I mean, we're orders of magnitude larger than the American folks that were consuming it, for example. And what fascinates me, and just the different perspectives. It's interesting, the aging pressure that you're talking about, because I think that exists worldwide. It's just being recognized as a specific issue in Japan and China, as you've noted, and Korea. But there are these different perspectives which I'm trying to get into the fold of general discussion, and what's happening specifically in the Middle East with regards to A-Life and these kind of technologies is something that I know something's happening. I've got good people that are, going over there and doing related work, although it's all top secret. So I can't get any indication of what the direction is. Do you have any insight into other perspectives in the world? Do you have any insight into, for example, the Middle Eastern perspective?
Yeah, so I'm very interested in various types of philosophies that includes Middle East or I don't know, Greenland or Nepalese Tibetan philosophy. Actually, we have created a couple of efforts in looking at diverse philosophy and logic. Tibetan logic, for example. And there are ways to teach monks in their debate. There's such a thing as a Tibetan debate, where you debate on something and then you exchange roles, and one is standing, one is sitting. It's fascinating. And that's part of the mathematics of logic there. And I don't fully understand it. It's just really fascinating to look at various views, and that sort of dictates the structure around it that you build in society. I mean, the sort of Christian kind of cell has dictated how the university has been developed over the few last centuries. It's still kind of young, no? That architecture has lasted for a while. Now we are sort of stuck in it. All the major universities where I have major journals, publishing houses where we publish our papers, are dictated by all those same rules. It's time to maybe evolve that a little bit further, and I think taking inspiration in those is helpful. So yeah, I'm sort of, it's maybe a hobby of mine of creating small efforts in that. We have our latest one is our center in Kathmandu, the Center for the Study of Apparent Selves, which is sort of a wordplay on Buddhist views, where we actually invite other traditions as well. We try to go every year at the end of the year. Maybe not this year because I'm organizing a life here in Kyoto. I hope you'll show up.
People have already contacted me with regards to this. This is a difficult series. I'd like to turn up virtually in these circumstances, because that way at least I can feel like I'm there. Certainly last year in Copenhagen, that was my experience. And I had a fascinating experience being there virtually. It did require me to wake up very early in the morning and stay awake for a large portion of the day. But I'd certainly, my aim is to be back at least virtually. It would be wonderful to be back physically. Obviously, there are a wide variety of friends that I know virtually, and the benefit of attending an A-Life conference is, getting to meet the likes of, Mark Bordeaux and people that you've talked to for years, and actually meeting them in the flesh. Steen Rasmussen was also like that. To actually meet Steen was, a real privilege. Obviously, Charles and a wide variety of folks at Lansing was great fun as well.
So I do it's still a small enough community, focused enough on those open-ended questions that it's a group of friends now. So we just like to meet each other. It's a few hundred people. It's not like a few tens of thousands like other conferences. So it's a very very social gathering. I really love it.
Certainly. So let's talk about projections, because this is the thing that fascinates me with regards to actually doing what you're doing and forming, a different kind of interest, not historically what artificial life has been connected with. What are your feelings with regards to the next 5 years? What do you think is genuinely exciting that you see on the horizon?
Right. Well, there's a lot of things happening. I think open-endedness. I've seen the word said by DeepMind in papers, right? open-endedness is all you need. Is the title of a paper. How amazing
Yes.
is that? So people are finally so DeepMind is maybe the first exception, but there was a center at OpenAI until recently. So before Ken Stanley left it, he was leading the open-endedness group there,
Certainly.
and I think the larger community is waking up to the call of A life, and I think this is becoming pretty evident, and we have decided to sort of surf on this and ask the world again. And so we have a collaboration with the Yamauchi Foundation, so that's the Nintendo family, that helped us start a new center here. So it's not really announced yet. It will be really open, as also it's exclusive to some extent. It's not completely secret, and we'll start it in October at the conference. So the first day of the conference is going to be the launch of this. It's going to be a very small institute, but we have secured a space, a little building that we have renovated, a traditional tea house that is going
Wonderful.
to be a research center for artificial. And then there's no other center that only does focus on artificial life research. And so at first it will be a very small group of people, and mostly people who will come and go, visiting researchers. But in the second phase, we'll engage with the industry, first local, but also invite people from relevant areas in the industry. So yeah, very exciting, and just starting this year. So in 5 years, I think we'll have made real progress. There is no, so that's, I'm quoting Ken Stanley here. Recently, so we, in our conversations about this institute, because he's involved as well, the founders have looked for what is the real value, what should we focus on, right? And the first thing that we realized is there has never been a real investment in making a larger amount of larger scale computation, right? Simulation of artificial life. And what's the top amount that we have spent so far? I think it's no more than $5,000, $10,000. And that's incredible. So that's so small compared to anything AI and even other fields of science. So I
disagree with Ken Stanley on that point. I mean, it was, unfortunately, I had the opportunity to chat with him, but it was difficult to actually get that point through. My view is that if you look at Avida as, a thing, it is probably a few $1 million run in terms of its development, in terms of the things through it. Just in my own life, if I look at the stuff that I've done, it's been, if you look at the companies and the time and the investment, it's more than $1 million run. This notion of the $1 million run is an instant for Ken Stanley. It is, you get funding, you do the computation, and it all happens really quickly. If you take the long-term view, I think there have been a number of examples of artificial life that are at least in the $1 million run segment and should be given respect accordingly. I think the notion of this immediate, which comes from OpenAI, unfortunately, this immediate, you get in the capital, you do the run, you make that's in a very short term. If you look at artificial life as being the long-term game, I think there's a lot more examples of simulations and work which requires respect because it has actually garnered probably that level over, tens of years. So I think that's where the $1 million, well, for him, it's a $10 million run. I don't know if any of my stuff comes to $10 million, but I know, Avida is pushing decent numbers. So I think
it's a 30, well, not for Avida, but artificial life at least is a 30-year plus endeavor. And it does compound. It does compound, and sort of some of those branches continue. But I don't know if it's comparable to the scale of AI. We're not talking about millions; it's billions.
Without question, without question. I'm not arguing that.
Compounded
that. But I think certainly the stuff that we do deserves a certain level of respect, even if money is concerned. It's completely shift the topic. Something that has fascinated me as an artificial life developer, an experience that I've had recently, is becoming a parent, and I know you're a parent as well. Can we talk a little bit about what having a child does to one's perspective on artificial life? Because that's certainly something that I reflect on very heavily.
Very interesting. Yeah. I don't have a well. Becoming a dad has changed me deeply, for sure. So first, it has taken a lot of attention and time,
Certainly.
and reshuffling my schedule around to make it work. But of course, the comparison here is we are creating life, and we have created artificial life. We have attempted to create an artificial life to some extent. We have achieved it, but now we're creating real life. And the comparison, actually, when I was expecting my first child, or my partner was. That's the time when I wrote my first ethics of a life paper, and I have written a couple. And I became interested in what are the rights for future hybrid, weird, strange kind of life that emerges in very different substrates. We won't have rules or understanding of what it means for it to suffer, be happy, how it embeds its value. It's going to be so distant. How do we ensure that we are fair to it? Because we'll have a responsibility like a parent. Your question sort of leads in that direction. I think it's very important set of questions, and rather than address it in the void, we try to address it by grounding it in artificial life simulations and various work. I think it's a super important question, and it's embedded directly in this valuing diverse intelligences that we were talking about before. What do you think? I'm curious. We never talked about that.
Biology for me was a study that I had done, not explicitly in university, but obviously in creating artificial life simulations. You have to, delve into biology rather heavily. My understanding of genetics has changed fundamentally. I have twins who are very diverse. My brothers are twins as well. They're exact opposites. My daughters are twins. They're exact opposites. So you get to see biology in action in ways that you never really thought about before. Linguistics in particular, I think is absolutely fascinating. I have just a completely changed understanding of biology and linguistics and early development, and just the amount of time that goes in, the amount of energy, the amount of meals that is required in order to adapt this. And I feel very much as a hobbyist that I've been able to circumvent a lot of that through my simulation work, but actually to see it in front of you has fundamentally changed my perspective. I'm interested in this idea that it changed with regards to the ethics part with you specifically. This was something that I delved into quite heavily more than a decade ago, both through academic writing and also public talks associated with what a life and ethics means fundamentally. So I already have a sense of that, particularly living in the US where you have large homeless populations, you have a complete economic diversity, you have a sense that humans are not valued by the system that is fundamentally, so what is the value of a human in the contemporary economic system? Not as great as certainly neocons would like to talk about. So there's a kind of politicization and also a breadth of discussion which hit me before having children. Having children for me has been more about exploring biology in ways that I never thought was applicable. I've learned a lot just on genetics and linguistics and these kind of things, which I thought I had a rough understanding of writing simulations with regards to them for many years previous.
In front of you, right? It's magic happening in your hands. It's incredible. We tend to. I distance myself, right, without knowing it, with my research, of course. It's just the simulations, but when it's here, that sort of reminds you of the magic. Maybe if you needed to be reminded that here you go. And having twins, you're right. That's a special gift, right? It's seeing more of it in terms of
yes.
Genetic.
There's a gestalt there that is far greater than just two all on their own. So yes, most definitely.
Yeah.
Olaf, it's been a real pleasure to have the chance to chat with you. In terms of the viewers of this particular video, you're a popular topic of conversation on the various message boards and other places that I frequent. So I think just having you on this recording will hopefully welcome a new group of viewers to the previous recordings. But Anything final that you would like to say to the viewers who are very diverse? They're not traditionally. I knew when I did an audio podcast exactly who was listening in. Now I'm doing a video podcast. I don't have a sense of who's listening in, and certainly having Ken Stanley on, gave me an opportunity to explore some aspect of artificial life and artificial intelligence. But again, it was very potted. It was very framed. So, in terms of talking to the viewers of this particular video, any thoughts that you would like to leave them with?
There's my mind is sort of empty, maybe reflecting the emptiness study of of philosophy here in Japan, which is being facetious here. But I think, I liked a lot the conversation. I really liked that we talked about diversity of minds, and we finished with creating life, and how those things. All those things we study can be found, the emergence of language, all the magic of features of that we try to reach in artificial life. They happen with ease, right? They happen so effortlessly. This is this is the kind of magic we want to study. And if there are maybe prospective students in the field that are listening to this, I think please come to the conference. It's a very fun place to be, and we'll be in Kyoto this year. Maybe join us, Tom and I, and and many others, talking about crazy topics about the nature of life, intelligence. Thank you so much for having me, Tom. Very fun.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much. So let me stop the recorder. The beauty of this thing, can I turn it off easily? Is that we can have a conversation.